Hey guys, what's going on? It's your boy, the Mad Kiger, and up here today, I'm doing a new style of video here. I want to apologise yet again for the lateness of videos and so forth. Once again, apologies in advance. I'm doing a new style of video here. I have mentioned it before in the past that I wanted to do sort of like buying guides for consoles. And today I'm going to be doing sort of like a recommendation for the PlayStation 4. You could call this a buying guide, or you can call it a recommendation video, whatever you want to call it. I want to start off with some information about when it comes to collecting new consoles. Now, I want to start off by saying that I got the PlayStation 4 in what I like to call the in my opinion, the best cycle of its lifetime. Now, there are, in my opinion, 3 cycles, maybe 4, when it comes to consoles. There's year 1, launch slash launched and launch cycle, which obviously is when the console first comes out. It's only got a few games for it. It still has a few kinks to be worked out. Before, I used to get new consoles just like that. But I've started to learn when it comes to new consoles, it's not always the best thing to go out and buy a console day one. And you'll understand why when I get into the next few cycles. But of course, when a console first comes out, it's going to be expensive. Again, it's going to be tempting because it's new. It's going to have, some games coming out that look amazing, doing what the launch cycle needs to do. Then we have the best cycle in my opinion, is what I like to call cycle 2, and that is year 2/3. In my opinion, this is the best time to buy consoles. Like I said, not so much when it comes to older consoles, but from, modern generation consoles and so on. When a console has been out for about year 2-3 years, which is when I got my PlayStation 3, I got it about three years into its life cycle. That, in my opinion, is the best time to get consoles because they've worked out a lot of the bugs with the hardware. The hardware is starting to reach its potential almost. It's still got some work to do, but it's at a high level that it needs to be at, which isn't achieved when a console first comes out. Then, of course, you have the options available to you because, there's like so many different variations of consoles by then. You'll have, for example, with the PlayStation 4, there's 3 variations of a PlayStation 4 you can now get. You can get the normal PlayStation 4, which with the Mark 1, we call it. Then you have the Slim, which is what I have, the Mark 2. And then, of course, we have the Mark 3 with the PlayStation 4 Pro. Each of them have their pros and cons. Of course, the PlayStation Pro is the best PlayStation 4 you can get with all the, HDR and 4K and all that good stuff. The Slim, on the other hand, is a little bit smaller. It does have improvements over the original. And, of course, the original is still the cheapest option available. But in my opinion, if you haven't got a PS4, the best thing available to you is really based on what you want. If you're going for a budget, go with the original. If you're sort of in the middle, you want a good experience from the PlayStation 4, but without needing to break the bank as much, the Slim, in my opinion, is perfect. The Slim, in my opinion, is actually probably the best PlayStation 4 if you don't have a 4K TV. And then, of course, you have the Pro, which is, the god tier of the elite. It's kind of like, like the Xbox 360 when you had the arcade, the premium, and then you had the elite. You had the 3 options available for you. And that normally comes out in about years 2 to 4. So depending on how well a console is supported. You know, you have some consoles like the Wii U that just never really got that phase. That got killed off before it got good. Original Xbox, for example, the GameCube and all of those fantastic consoles that came and went, you know, and things like that. Again, year two is not only a good time for the variations of consoles and like the different styles of consoles, like the limited editions, the accessories, all the different types of controllers, the external hard drives, all of these extras, different, but most importantly, the games. In my opinion, year 2 to 4 is when a console is going to have the best set of games out, because most people are going to be like, if the console's doing well, they're going to want to put their games out on this system. For example, PlayStation 4, in my opinion, is still, in my opinion, sorry, forget saying that twice, is probably the best console to collect for at this time for variety. And you're going to see that when I get into some games in a bit. Now, and then, of course, you have the later cycles, which obviously towards the end, and then the end cycle where, you know, the console is starting to go into its remission, starting to put out the most highest potential games you can have. Either give it a great send-off or just give up on it. Companies will do one of two things. The Wii U was a fine example of them just giving up on it, whereas I feel like the PlayStation 4, Sony are doing the best job to try and give it its great farewell send-off before the PlayStation 5 takes over. And of course, we know the PlayStation 5 is going to have backwards compatibility and all this good stuff. But as time goes on, we'll talk about that in the future. Now, before I get into some PlayStation 4 games, I want to mention the Nintendo Switch. Now, Nintendo Switch, in my opinion, is in the stage where, in my opinion, the buy stage. So phase 2, almost. Phase 2 is often considered to be the best phase, because now the Nintendo Switch is starting to reach what I like to call the buy stage, because it now has different options available to buy. So you now have the normal Switch. You've now got the Switch Mini coming out, which is a cheaper variation you can get. Again, there's always a cheaper option available. And then, of course, we will be getting the Switch XL or whatever it's called, which will be the upgraded Switch, the elite version of the Switch. And that's always how it seems to be with consoles now. There's always 3 versions, and there's always pros and cons about each of them. And now the Switch, I never got the Switch, and I still don't have a Switch yet, mostly because in its release cycle, I didn't feel like there was anything pulling me towards it. Yes, there were some decent games, and there still are. You know, upon launch, you had your Smash Bros, your Zeldas, your Mario games, and all of those good things. But there wasn't anything about it that really pulled me to go, I need the Switch in my life. Now the Switch is starting to reach that cycle where there's a ton of games, hundreds and thousands of games, both physical and digital. They're experimenting with the hardware, you know, like the Mini and the upgraded version coming out. So it might be time to get a Nintendo Switch. Let me know in those comments below, should I get a Switch? Which one should I get? Should I just get the normal Switch? Should I go for the budget option and get the Mini? Or should I wait until the next option comes available within the next few months? Let me know in those comments below, because I do want to get a Switch now, because there are a ton of great games out for the Switch. And that's why I love the buy cycle. Phase 2 is what I like to call it. But of course, we're not here to talk about the Switch. We're here to talk about the PlayStation 4. Now, I've been collecting the PlayStation 4 for about 2 years now, maybe a little bit longer. And I've got to say, the PlayStation 4 is becoming one of my favorite consoles, not only to play, but to collect for, because there are just so many great games. Now, like I said, the PlayStation 4 is no longer in what I like to call phase 2. It's more towards phase 3, where Sony are trying to put out the best games they can on it before we go on to the next generation of consoles. But that don't mean Sony are giving up on the PlayStation 4. I feel like Sony are going to push the PlayStation 4 to its utmost limit before bringing out the next generation. And if what they're saying is true, the PlayStation 5 is going to be fully backwards compatible with all the previous generations, then there's no reason not to get PlayStation 4 games now. PlayStation 4 games are becoming a little bit cheaper, and that's another thing you need to watch out for, especially when it comes to gaming and collecting. And I watched a Metal Jesus video on this last night, and it's important to note that collecting games in different periods are going to become cheaper and more expensive. When a console first comes out, it's going to be at the highest point. They're going to want to get the most money they can for it. Year 2 and 3 is again why I like to call it the buy period, because those previous games that have come out are going to be a little bit cheaper, and there's going to be more options available for you. So there's going to be cheaper games out there, budget games, as well as the AAA titles. Now, like I said, with the PlayStation 4, you're going to see here a variety of games, but I do want to mention I'll speak about that at the end. Actually, I won't mention it now, but now's a good time to get the PlayStation 4 because a lot of the games are a little bit cheaper. Most of these games that I've got here that I'm showing off were under £30. Some of them were even under £10. Now, I've tried to avoid it, multi-platform games here, but there might be one or two in here that are thing. And I just wanted to show off the variety of the PlayStation 4. But we can't actually start with some of the variety without mentioning the PlayStation 4's first party AAA titles. Now, of course, every console needs their go-to games from Sony, you know, their branded games, Sony branded games, exclusives. So we have here, of course, God of War. I still haven't actually played this yet, but I know this is considered to be one of the best PlayStation 4 games out there. Neo, another example of a game that I haven't played, but some people might consider this to be a first-party Sony game. Others might consider it to be, you know, well, it's a Koei Tecmo game, but it could be considered one of those PlayStation 4 exclusives that are, you know, fit in with the AAA titles, because this is another example of a great game that you know fits in with like games like God of War. Of course, we have to have Spider-Man here. In my opinion, one of the best superhero games you're ever going to play. I have done a review on this game if you want to check that out as well. I talk more about it then. Spider-Man, in my opinion, is probably one of the best PlayStation 4 games you're going to get, single-player experiences. And then, of course, we are continuing on with Horizon Zero Dawn. This is another example of just a fantastic, amazing game that is, you know, a first-party title, an exclusive, a game that Sony, you know, when I mean first-party titles, I mean, yes, they're not necessarily made by Sony themselves, but what I mean is these are the AAA titles that, you know, Sony, you'll see advertisements for everywhere. You'll see it on the TV, you'll see it on buses, see it in magazines and all of those good things, you know. And Horizon Zero Dawn is just a fantastic game. I'm still playing through it. I'm really enjoying this game. It is so good. But these are just examples of the greatness that Sony have done putting out AAA titles. And you could say, like, again, the Nintendo Switch did the same thing with the Zelda, the Mario games, and the Xbox have done the same with the Halo, the Gears of War, and so forth. But these are just 4 examples of, if you get a PlayStation 4, and you want to start off with some AAA titles, these are 4 good options for you. And most of these you'll get for under £20 now. I mean, I paid £15 for Spider-Man, and God of War was a bit more expensive, but most of these games you'll be able to get now because even though they're still AAA Sony titles, these games you'll find anywhere. So these are the ones you want to go for. Now, we're getting into a little bit more of the outer territory. Now, a series that I want to mention, and I feel like I need to mention, is the Yakuza series. Now, I do have Kiwami 1 and 0, but I have them digital. So here's Kiwami 2 and 6. I cannot do the Yakuza games justice just by mentioning them. Now, I do want to put this out there. These games might not be for everyone because there are some things about these games that not everyone might like. These games are a little bit more on the slower side at points. So there is quite a bit of text. It is Japanese based. It is kind of like a mix between a Japanese RPG / open world game. But what makes these games great is the amazing storytelling. And in my opinion, probably what I love about these games is just the fact of these games have so much to them. I've done a review on Yakuza's Kiwami, and I don't know if I've done 0, I'll have to double check that. But what are great about the Yakuza series is A, they're exclusive to PlayStation 4, and B, is just the sheer amount of content that you get with these. You could get one of these games and it would take you hundreds, sometimes hundreds of hours to get everything in the game. Again, like I said, they're not for everyone, to be aware of that, but there's so many different things to unlock in this game, extra content, bonus modes, mini games, the list goes on. Now, why I wanted to mention the Yakuza series for the PlayStation 4 is, yes, these games are out on the PlayStation 2 and the PlayStation 3, but Sony and Sega have done a great job of bringing all of the bar except Dead Souls to the PlayStation 4. Now, like I said, you've got Yakuza Kiwami 1 and 2, which are remakes of the first and second game. Of course, you can get these physical and digital. And then, of course, you've got 6 and 0, which are standalone games. So these were made for the PlayStation 4. These weren't remakes. These were full games made for the PlayStation 4. And now you have the remastered collection, which includes 3, 4, and 5. Now, 3, 4, and 5 were the hard ones to get. These did come out on PlayStation 3. But in my opinion, the Yakuza series is a very hard series to get every game for before, obviously, the PlayStation 4, because 1 and 2 were PlayStation 2 games, but 2 is a very expensive and rare PlayStation 2 game, because I think it was one of the late PlayStation 2 games. It only came out in limited quantities and good things like that. 3, 4, and 5 were a similar thing. I think 5 only came out in Japan. Again, another reason why Sega have done a great job bringing the remastered collection with 3, 4, and 5 to PlayStation 4. Now, there is a catch at the moment. You can only play 3. You can buy the remastered collection straight away on the digital PlayStation Store, and you'll get Yakuza 3 remastered to play now. 4 will be coming out at the end of October, and 5 will be coming out in February. But the good news is we will be getting the physical limited edition version in February with 5. So I might just wait and pre-order that and get that physical version with all of them. I do want to have all of the physical games, Yakuza games, in my collection. Like I said, I have Kiwami and 0 both digital because I got them for like a tenner when they were on sale. And I believe they are still on sale now, the big in Japan sale. But the Yakuza series, in my opinion, are a must-own, must-play series if you like these sort of games. Like I said, they're not for everyone, maybe play one of them, check it out. If you enjoy it, then PlayStation 4, yet again, well done for bringing these series to your console, because now we have the complete series with 7 on its way as well. 7's going to change the game from what I hear. I've seen a little bit of gameplay. It definitely looks interesting. I'm not sure if it's going to be... I mean, different can be good depending, but we'll wait and see. Like I said, Dead Souls is the only one we haven't got any information on. But I could see Sega putting Dead Souls out maybe as a standalone remastered game, or maybe a standalone upscaled version, or maybe they might throw it away with the remastered collection. Who knows? Now we're going to get into some obscure and different varieties of games. So first thing I want to mention is indie titles. PlayStation 4 is a great example of a console that just has so many indie titles. Here's one called The Last Tinker, City of Colors. Now, I haven't actually played this, so I don't know it, but there are so many cool indie titles that you can get on the PlayStation 4. Not only digital, because you can get most of the digital indie titles on Xbox One, PC and stuff like that. But what I love is that Sony do allow a lot of these smaller companies to put out their indie titles as physical versions. Whether you like indie games or not, me personally, I'm on the fence. If the game's good, and I enjoy it, I like it. Some of them I can appreciate, but I don't really like them. But what I do love is the collecting side of them. And that's why I love the PlayStation 4. It's because a lot of the indie titles are physical on PlayStation 4. And I believe Switch is doing a similar thing. So a lot of these indie titles, Switch and PlayStation 4 are doing similar things. Whereas Xbox are trying to focus on hardware and, putting out the best looking games, whereas this is why I still believe PlayStation 4 is the better console at the moment, just for the sole fact, especially for collectors. So yeah, another example is again is the Firewall Pro Wrestling series. So Fire Pro Wrestling series. Now, I wanted to mention this game because this is another example of obscure games coming back to the PlayStation 4. Now, you might remember these games, you might not. I know of them. I've played a little bit of this. It is not, I don't know if it's really for me. It's a good game, but it's a little bit on the hard learning curve game. But this is another example of obscure games coming to the PlayStation 4. Games that you just don't see on other systems. So I wanted to mention Firewall Pro Wrestling World. This is a bit more expensive. So this is why I wanted to mention this one. Rare games. Be aware that some of these games that are coming out on PlayStation 4, always be on the lookout for these games. Whether you like them or not, be on the lookout, because these are the ones that in about 5 or 6 years time are going to be worth a bit more money. So if you ever need that extra bit of money, it's good to have a few of these sort of expensive games in your backlog, just as a backup. I personally prefer not to sell my games, but if emergencies come up, it's always good to have them. On the other fence, we have budget titles. A similar thing to indie titles. Pinball Arcade here. Just a pinball game, but these are another example of budget titles. Now, Sony is no stranger when it comes to budget titles. Just look at the PlayStation 2 alone. About 60% of those games were budget titles. Budget titles can be worth it or not. So budget titles basically means games that are sold for when they release for under £20. In my opinion, any game that's under £20 normally is a budget title on release. So when a game comes out straight away, if it's under £20, chances are it's a budget title. That can work in some people's favor because you can get a new game for cheap, but on the other hand, it might not be amazing. It might be missing a few things, but just be aware that this is another reason why the PlayStation 4 is worth collecting for, is because there are a bunch of budget titles that you can get dirt cheap, and still you can get some entertainment out of it, but always good for us collectors. Like I said, this video could be classed for collectors, or it could be classed for people just wanting to get into gaming. Then, of course, I had to mention the Warrior series. There's so many of these Japanese hack and slash warrior games. Personal preference, I love the Warrior series, so this is Samurai Warriors 4 2. Again, I love the Warrior series. Now, 90% of the time, Warriors games only come out on PlayStation 4. Sometimes they'll bring out the big ones like Warriors Orochi 4 Ultimate is coming out. Will come out on Switch and Xbox, but about 85% of the Warriors games, the smaller ones, will only come out on PlayStation 4. Again, this is just a personal preference. If you don't like the Warriors series, fair enough, but I just wanted to mention it. Now we get into some more Japanese titles. I wanted to mention visual novels. Now, Sony are no stranger when it comes to visual novels. Now, these are very big in Japan, especially on like a PlayStation 3, the PlayStation 2, and to some extent the PlayStation 1. If you go to Japan, you're going to see hundreds of these visual novel games for many of these Sony consoles in the past. But what I love about the PlayStation 4 is they've actually started to bring a decent amount of visual novels and translate them into English for the PlayStation 4 for the rest of the world. This is called Chaos Child. I believe it's actually part of the Steins Gate series, which I believe is also an anime. So if you like these visual novel games, I've never actually played a visual novel game, but if you like these style of games, be aware that PlayStation 4 does have quite a few of these games on the PlayStation 4 without having to go to Japan or pay import prices. Then also I wanted to mention Japanese strategy games. Again, similar thing with the visual novels. Here's Romance of the Three Kingdoms 13. 14's on the way. Now, there's a bunch of strategy games on the PlayStation 4 as well. A similar thing, like I said, I'm not really focusing on great games or games that are must play here. These are just sort of showing off why I love the PlayStation 4 and collecting for it. This is another example of some games that come out and not many people talk about them. But if you do like heavy strategy games, PlayStation 4 has a ton of them. But yeah, and then of course we had to mention JRPGs. Here's Star Ocean, Integrity and Faithlessness. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of JRPGs on Sony systems. Again, Japan, Sony being a Japanese console, they're doing a great job with bringing a lot of these JRPGs from Japan and bringing them over to the Western territory, so the UK, USA, and even, you know, online and things. And of course, doing the right thing with, even if the game is in Japanese, they translate the writing into English, because me personally, I don't mind playing a game if it's in a different language, as long as I can read it. That's all that matters by me. But I just want to put this out there that if you're a fan of Japanese RPGs, PlayStation 4 is where it's at. Because, you know, there were a lot of JRPGs on PlayStation 3 as well, and also PlayStation 2 and 1, but a lot of those games are becoming a lot more expensive. So that's why I get these JRPGs on the PlayStation 4, because they are still quite cheap, some of them. So again, similar thing, these games will become a little bit more expensive because these are the ones that people want. With the PlayStation 4, I don't think it's going to be as sought after as the PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 1 JRPGs, mainly because those games came out in limited quantities, whereas these ones have become a little bit more readily available. And then last but not least, I need to mention the PlayStation VR. Again, it's been a while since I played the VR, mainly because in this bedroom I don't get the best quality from it, so I probably have to take it downstairs. I'm going to get a nice case for it at some point anyway, so it'll be easy to move about. But I had to mention the PlayStation VR because, in my opinion, the PlayStation VR is another console to add on to your PlayStation 4. And here's just a few examples of PlayStation VR titles. I've got Don't Knock Twice here, Star Trek Bridge Crew, and of course Resident Evil 7. In my opinion, if you're going to play a PlayStation VR title, this is probably the one you want to play if you're brave enough. The PlayStation VR, again, it's not for everyone, but I just want to put it out there that the PlayStation VR in its own right is like collecting an extra console. You know, like how, I'm going to go way back here, but do you remember like how there was on the Atari 2600, there was that extra, I can't remember what it was called, but it was like a tape recorder which you attached to the console, and it allowed you to get a few extra games. Essentially, it's similar to that. I don't mean in any way is it similar, but what I mean is, do you remember how like some of these consoles you had to have extra attachment to play certain games, like the ColecoVision had like the and the television had the voice module and the controller, the steering wheel and all that good stuff. So the PlayStation VR is in a way similar. It's an accessory, an expensive one, but which also allows you in its own right to collect more games and its own sort of style of game, because a lot of these games you do need a VR to play. Some of them, like Resident Evil, so you can play without the VR, but like I said, what you want to do is you want to check out if it says VR compatible. That means you can play the game with or without the VR. But if it just says PlayStation VR, it does say required behind this. That means you need the PlayStation VR, and it's always good to always important to check on the back whether you do need the Move controllers, because some of them you don't need the Move controllers with, other ones you do. Again, I've already done video on the PlayStation VR, but I did want to mention it again. Now, that's basically the physical side of things, but I do think it's worth mentioning the digital side of things. Sony have the PlayStation... fuck, I'm going to have to extra. The shop, the PlayStation Digital Shop, in my opinion, is a great way for you to get games without, not everyone likes physical games. Not everyone has room for physical games. So if you are looking forward to getting a PlayStation 4 just for the games without needing to take up loads of space, don't worry. The PlayStation 4 shop, depending on what country you're from, has tons, and I mean thousands of games available. Most of the games that I've shown here will be available on the store, but then you also have games exclusive to the PlayStation Store. So again, that PlayStation Store is always good because there's always new deals. There's always new games coming out that don't come out physical, or at least not straight away. Other third-party companies might put them out physical, like limited run games and strictly limited and things like that. But be aware that the PlayStation Store is fantastic when it comes to getting games, because you'll be able, there's been many a time where I've gone on and I've brought like bundles and things like that, in a way similar to Steam. It's really down to personal preference. I like to have a variety. I love my physical games, but if I can get a game cheap, from the PlayStation Store with its sale, I got The Witcher a Game of the Year edition the other day for £10.50 or £10.49, and that includes all of the DLC, which is fantastic, you know. And a lot of the times digital games will be a little bit cheaper than physical, depending on what shops you go to and all that good stuff. So physical versus digital excuse me, physical versus digital, it's really down to you. Each have their pros and cons. I won't go into it, but yeah, I wanted to do this video just to sort of show off why I love collecting for the PlayStation 4. Hopefully this video might steer you guys in the right direction if you have a PlayStation 4 and you want to start collecting, or you're thinking about getting a PlayStation 4. Hopefully this video has helped you show it off, because I just wanted to mention a lot of people, when they show off their PlayStation 4 collection, you know, I see it in Facebook groups and other YouTube videos and all this stuff. It's always the same games. It's the multi-platform games, you know, the God of War and all that stuff. While these games are great in their own right, for me personally, they're always forgetting the most important thing about PlayStation 4, and that is the variety. And hopefully this video will show you what I mean by the variety. Variety is the spice of life, and the PlayStation 4, in my opinion, is probably, in my opinion, and I might get a lot of hate for this, the best console, modern generation, current gen generation console to collect for. Now, I didn't say it's the best console. You know, Xbox is better for the hardware, Switch is better for the, you know, the playability in terms of thing. But in terms of collecting, if you are a collector like me and you want to collect for a modern console between the Switch, Xbox and PS4, hopefully this video will show you why the PlayStation 4, in my opinion, is the best console to collect for of this generation. That being said, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. It's something a little bit different, a bit of a longer video, but hopefully the quality of the video will be upgraded now I have my new phone. So the picture quality for taking pictures is fantastic, but I don't know about the video quality, so hopefully we shall see. But if you guys enjoyed today's video, feel free to leave a like, and of course comment below. Let me know what you think of the PlayStation 4. Has this video given you some ideas? Has it helped you? Do you think this is a good video? Should I do this for other consoles? Sort of like a buying guide almost. I do want to do one for PlayStation 2 because, you know me, I love my PlayStation 2. Sorry I haven't really touched on like the console and shown off the actual console itself and the, you know, the controllers and all that good stuff. I just wanted to sort of focus on sharing some opinions and showing off some of the games. Like I said, I haven't really talked about the games because if you want to see me talk about the games, check out my collection videos and updates and all that good stuff. But anyway, guys, feel free to subscribe if you haven't already and join the family. Couple videos on the way. I should be doing a Gears of War 5 review coming soon. Finished that, Gears 5. I know people are going to hate me for that, but it's still Gears of War 5 in my opinion. Started Borderlands 3. Pretty good so far. A bit on the buggy side with the freezing, but that could have just been the internet. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching, and as always, have a nice day, and I'll see you in the next video. I thought there was a cat in the room. Take care, and bye-bye.